What has happened in Minneapolis deserves clarity, not choreography. Yet what the public has been given instead is familiar pattern. Selective language, delayed facts, and leadership more focused on managing perception than confronting reality. This isn't about rushing to judgment, and it's about recognizing when those in authority begin shaping conclusions before the public has access to verified information. When officials caution against misinformation while withholding details, they aren't protecting the truth. They're preemptively insulting themselves from scrutiny. The erosion of trust doesn't happen overnight, but moments like this accelerate it. The media plays a central role in the breakdown of coverage, increasingly, which relies on euphemisms and narrative framing, often that direct description. Word matters, words matter, and when violence is softened into abstraction and reduced to context, the audience is quietly guided away from asking questions. Instead of pressing officials for specifics, too many outlets act as translators of official talking points. Journalism was meant to interrogate power, not harmonize with it. When the press becomes more concerned with stabilizing narratives than illuminating facts, the public is left navigating confusion by design. The local government leadership has compounded the problem. What we hear a great deal about is emotions, tensions, and community pain, important considerations but not substitutes for accountability. What's missing is straightforward communication, what's happened, who has involved, what laws apply, and what steps are being taken to ensure transparency. Gaslighting doesn't always look like outright falsehoods. Often it looks like minimizing deflection and the subtle suggestion the public concern itself is irresponsible. That's posture doesn't de escalate distrust, it entrenches it. Protest is an essential and protected part of our society. The principle should never be to question, but neither should the boundary between lawful protest and unlawful obstruction. Using vehicles to block roads, impeding law enforcement operations, threatening officers, or publishing personal information to intimidate individuals are not expressions of civil disobedience. They are criminal acts. When leaders hesitate to say that clearly, that sends a dangerous signal that the rule of law is conditional, applied selectively depending on politics or optics. A society cannot function when legality becomes negotiable. This becomes especially clear when the conversations turns to immigration enforcement and the sanctuary policies. Sanctuary policies are often framed as purely humanitarian, but in practice they place local jurisdictions in open tensions with federal law. Regardless of where they stand politically, federal immigration status remains a force unless changed by Congress. ICE agents enforcing those laws are not acting independently or arbitrarily. They are carrying out existing legal mandates. Blocking those operations through intimidation or physical interference is not protest, it is obstruction. When local leaders decline to condemn that behavior, they effectively choose ideology over legality. Now, as the public is caught in the middle of the conflict, subjected to mixed messages, on one hand, they are told the law must be respected. On the other, they watch certain violations excused or ignored when committed in service of favored cause. That double standard is corrosive. It breeds cynicism, not justice. It also places frontline workers like law enforcement officers, federal agents, and even the migrants themselves in untenable positions, navigating the political theater rather than clear policy. What makes moments like this especially volatile is the feedback loop between activism, media, and governance. Escalation is rewarded with intention, and the coverage is softened to avoid backlash. Officials echo that softened framing, and anyone demanding accountability is dismissed as divisive. Over time, the loop normalizes disorder and reframes enforcement itself as provocation. The result is not compassion or reform, but paralysis, where no one in authority is held responsible and the public is expected to absorb the consequences. Accountability begins with transparency. That means timeless release of verified information, including the body cam footage, where applicable. It means independent investigations, not pre-scripted press conferences. It means media outlets ask precise questions instead of amplifying vague assurances. And it means leaders drawing clear lines, condemning unlawful behavior without qualifiers of political hedging. The accountability also requires civic responsibility. A cause does not become just by abandoning the rule of law, and intimidation does not become the moral because it is popular in the moment. Minneapolis deserves leadership willing to speak plentifully. Federal agents deserve protection under the same laws that are tasked with enforcing. The public deserves facts, not framing, and the democratic society depends on the courage to confront uncomfortable truths without surrendering to the chaos or narrative in control. If leaders refuse to provide that courage, then responsibility returns where it belongs in a republic. The citizens are the ones. Demand transparency and reject the intimidation and hold officials accountable at the ballot box. And in the public discourse, this is the Unfiltered Political Lens Podcast, and truth doesn't need to be managed. It only needs to be told. Thank you guys for listening, and have a good day.